Namaskar, sir. Uh, Thank you for accepting our invitation to speak at this webinar organized by Department of Economics. The topic chosen by you, that is understanding the economics issues of migrant laborers during lockdown, is very close to the heart of St. Xavier's College. We have been doing a lot of work in this field, our economics, sociology department. We have a setup called social involvement program, and we like to sensitize our students towards their social responsibilities towards the society. And this SIP, social involvement program, has done a lot of work in last 2 months towards the migrants, distributing food, distributing medical kits, giving the financial assistance, trying to help them to reach their home. So we have been doing our bit in this area, and I'm glad that you're going to talk today on this. So welcome to this. Welcome to all the participants. I'm sure at the end of this webinar, you will have lots to take back. And thank you, Dr. Aparna, for taking initiative to organize this 4-day webinar, 4 speakers. I couldn't join in the last session, but today I'm here. Thank you, sir, once again, and over to you, Aparna.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Aditi ma'am to say a few words.
Okay, thank you, Principal Dr. Rajendra Shinde. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Aditi Sawant, Head Department of Economics. I welcome you all on the second day of the webinar organized by the Department of Economics, St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. My special thanks to my colleague and the mastermind behind organizing this webinar, Professor Aparna Kulkarni. I welcome today's guest of honor, I welcome today's guest of honor and a well-known economist, Mr. Ajit Abhyankar. Thank you, Ajit sir, for accepting our request to share your views and ideas on economic implications of COVID-19. Now, without much ado, I request Aparna to start the webinar, and all the best.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, sir. I welcome Mr. Ajit Abhyankar, who is today's speaker. Before he begins his lecture, I would like to introduce him. Mr. Ajit Abhyankar, who is currently serving as a faculty at Symbiosis School of Liberal Arts, and he is teaching a course in Introduction to Marxism. Before Symbiosis, he has earlier worked at BMCC, Brahan Maharashtra Commerce College, Pune, for 17 years. Apart from that, he is an activist, a well-known writer, and columnist both. He has written columns in various newspapers like Indian Express, Lok Satta. So he writes both in English as well as Marathi. Apart from the newspaper columns, he has authored several books, again, both in English as well as Marathi. He is a prolific speaker, and he's one of those who have understood Marx thoroughly and his philosophy. Apart from his educational qualification, that is MCom from Pune University, he has also done his MA in Sanskrit and philosophy from Tilak Maharashtra University. So he's a teacher, philosopher, and sir, we are eager to listen to you on the topic, that is understanding the migrant laborers issues during the pandemic as well as the lockdown period in India. So over to you, sir. Mr. Ajit Abhyankar.
Hey, thank you, Aparna, for a very kind introduction, invitation, and also special thanks to Principal Rajendra and Head of the Department, Aditi, and all the viewers and all the participants of this webinar. So what I'm going to speak now is really the pain of a section of our society which has been treated, the class divisions of this society after this pandemic have been exposed very badly, and I'm talking about that section of the society which has been almost treated like a unwanted baggage. When the ship is sinking and when the ship is in trouble, in order to save the humans, we unload the baggage or the unnecessary baggage, or we keep them in a corner so that they can be disposed of. So with very deep pain in my heart, I'm presenting this plight of the migrant workers and working class in general in this today's pandemic. See, I'm not going to talk about the exploitation of the workers and the social conditions of the workers which generally prevail in the country or in the world. That's not the topic. The topic is the pandemic and how this pandemic is being faced by different sections of the society. So I have chosen to use a word. The pandemic is naturally occurring, but the crisis that we are facing now, the social crisis, which may not be felt, some may not be sensitive even to feel this crisis. Because for some, this crisis just is a forced kind of a leave, where I can live in my apartment, I can seclude myself, I can close myself in an apartment, do the things and the hobbies which I always wanted to do but could not do, spend my time with my family and pursue my hobbies. And it can be a forced holiday for me. But this is the case for maybe 10% or 15% of the workers who are fortunate to have the separate apartments and sometimes even cozy apartments where electricity and water is running, the food is available. You can just go buy or order and you can get the food items and all items ready at your door. Now we are going to talk about a section which has been locked in for more than 60 days in a condition where they are left with no work, no money, and no food, and sometimes no food. And they are cramped inside the rooms where 10 people, 7 people are living in a shanty hutment made up of tins, and where 10 people are crowded, they're sleeping there and they're sharing the common toilets. And let me not describe all that. Everybody knows what a slum looks like. I am not the first person to tell you that. But I'm just telling you, looking at a slum otherwise is one thing. And imagining and understanding, being sensitive to the fact that the people there are living in that cramped kind of conditions for more than 2 months. And they are, struggling hard to go back to their villages, to go back to their native places. And I'm going to tell you the whole story of that. So I call this as a manufactured crisis in the days of a naturally occurring pandemic. So this is what I titled this as. Now, Aparna, can we share the screen now with the presentation which I have given you? Aparna, can we share the screen, the PPT presentation? Aparna, am I audible?
Yes, sir, you're audible. I think ma'am has.
Yes, I am sharing the PPT. Just one second.
Okay. Okay, I will continue.
Yeah.
Yes. So it starts. So first, I want to say that how people face the crisis depends on the class in which you are born. So that's why I call this as Corona and the working class in India, a manufactured crisis in the face of a pandemic. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Now just click this. Now this slide, this not the third one, not the third one, the second one, the second one. There is just a yes, this one. Now double click it and there is a video over there. I want to share that video.
Yeah,
I'm
trying.
If you double click that.
Yeah, I think it is happening.
Okay.
No, sir, it is not working.
No, it is not there. Okay. Actually, there was a video insertion there, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I will just share that video later on. It's a. Yeah. So it shows that this video shows the plight of the migrant workers, and this raises a question: हम सिर्फ प्रवासी हैं, क्या हम देश के वासी हैं? ये सवाल उठता है looking at the migrant workers. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, now I don't want to talk about the corona statistics because that statistics is slightly old. Just the next, no, the next. Corona and the working class. Let's see that slide. Okay, now this is the point. This is the main point I want to make. The corona crisis has exposed the class divisions in Indian society in the most ugly manner, I say. I cannot spare a word, better word by this, for this. It established that the poor and the informal sector, slum dweller, a peasant, has no worth to his life. And it is being treated like an unnecessary baggage. Now let's go to the next. The first point that I want to make, why I'm saying this? I'm saying this because what has happened to this working class, it is utter disregard to the workers. This complete disregard to the workers is visible in the following things. First is the manner in which the lockdown is declared. See, I say that we know that there are more than 3 to 4 crores minimum of the migrant workers who would need to go back to their respective villages in view of the fact that the lockdown is going to last long. I mean, government was knowing this, obviously. But it was lockdown, the lockdown was declared suddenly and totally with no notice given. So, taking into account the day of the disease, the spread of the disease, there is informed opinion even of the medical community, medical fraternity, that we could have given a notice of maybe 2 days, because by that time the corona had not spread. So there was no danger of corona getting spread in the meantime and then people going to their respective native places. That time could have been given and some arrangements could have been made. That is the first point. Second point is the living condition. There is no regard for the living conditions, like the food supplies, the money to spend, wages. Now let's look at the food supplies. See, many of the migrant workers do not have the ration cards. Number one, don't need to spend, because I work with the trade unions and the contract workers. It's not just the migrant workers, even the local workers. The migrant workers, see, in India, 90% of the workforce is in informal sector. So there is no formal contract of employment. So there is no question of any social security. There is no question of, employer bound to pay something even if you make the orders like that. So it is none but the government has to come forth and put some cash, put some purchasing power into the hands of the people and give food grains to the people. Now that order came, but it came late, number one, and the distribution mechanism was not proper. So the arrangements were not proper, the false promises, and as Shinde sir has very rightly said that your college has participated in this, some kind of social support work in the days of pandemic by distributing some food and supplies to the needy people. You know how difficult it was. So there is a complete disregard to that. Then and most glaring and the most painful part of it was the travel back. Now for 1 month, no travel was allowed, absolutely zero. There was not even talk of that. Now that time was available to plan. See, I'm not just describing the problem. I'm just trying to say how was it avoidable. That is the main point, because we are discussing it in a post-crisis. Now the crisis is still on, nonetheless, but the travel issue is now over. Traveling back to home, at least that issue is 80% over. So now we can say that this was possible, and this was possible even at that time, because 1 month was available to plan their travel, but nothing was done. And then the most important thing is the corona package, the content of the corona package. I will talk about that later, because I'm going to share some slides on this issue, and I'm going to talk in details about it. Okay, let's go to the next. Now we already know that there is a massive loss of income and jobs. There has been a report made by Stranded Workers Action Network. You might have seen that report, but if you have not, please do it. There have been petitions in Supreme Court. There have been petitions in various high courts. 12 high courts have given orders about the conditions of the migrant workers and other sections of the society. So I'm going to talk about that. So please read this report, because this lecture cannot cover everything. but there is a massive loss of jobs and income. It is estimated that around 12 crores of people have lost their jobs and work. I mean, that isn't necessarily employment. It may be, you know, they take the people, it's a home-based work. I mean, people get the work to be completed at home and then do some process on some raw material and give it back to the employers. Now, this is also a kind of employment. Now, that is also lost. So about 12 crores of the people have lost their jobs. Now, as Department of Economics, you can understand, if the factories stop working, if the traffic is halted, the demand comes down. If the demand comes down, obviously there is no income, there are no jobs, there is no income, there is fall in demand. Again, it's a vicious cycle, it deepens itself. So the next slide. So there is, I already said about, now there is empathy. We could not see empathy from the executive. We could not see empathy from judiciary also. Now I will come to this point. Okay, let's proceed. Now let's proceed to the next slide. Now I don't know whether you can actually see this screen because it might be the figures might be looking very small. But now people, this various universities, various researchers, various NGOs and networks have conducted surveys of the workers, migrant workers. How did they survive in this period? Now it is found, the question was asked, very pointed question. Since the beginning of the lockdown, how much have you taken as loan for rations? Very pointed question. Now if you see this blue bar in the middle, it shows a figure of 48% of the people have borrowed to the tune of 2,000 to 5,000. About 16% have borrowed to the tune of 5,000 to 8,000. And again, 15% have borrowed more than 8,000 rupees in this period. And this survey is made, I think, about a fortnight back. So about in the first 1.5 months, they have borrowed so much. And you can see this slide, you can share this slide so actually with all the participants. So it shows that now what is their income? See, their income is about 10,000, in the range of 10,000 rupees. And they had to borrow 5,000, 48, about 50% of them have to borrow for food. Now, what about the other supplies which they needed? I mean, you require not just food. So they had, now what about the travel? Let's go to the next point. About the travel. Was travel free? Go to the next slide. Now, it is generally believed by many people that the travel was arranged by the government and it was free. Now, this is not the fact. This is a travesty of truth. The travel was not free for most of the people. You will find, if you see this slide, again, this is based on a very big sample. I mean, the sample had been very large. Thousands of workers were interviewed. Now, you will find 62% of the people have paid more than 1,500 rupees for their travel. 62%. Only 14% people, which is on the left side, I mean, red bar, it shows figure of 14%. So no money, it was free only for 14% of the people. 85% of the people have spent for the travel and 62% have spent more than 1,500 rupees for their travel. Now you know how people have traveled and when did they travel. The people wanted to travel, there were no railways, the buses were not allowed. We have seen a very pathetic sight, many of them traveling in milk containers in a hole about 15, 20, 30 people are cramping themselves in a hole. Actually, it's a hole with children, with women, in trucks, in containers, closed containers. So they had to travel, and that too after paying huge amounts of money. So the railway started later. Now there has been, a fight between the railway ministry and the state government. That is, the railways could not be, the passengers did not report, etc. I have been a participant in this whole process. I can tell you that the directives regarding the certificates and the prerequisites of the travel were not clear. And it was very difficult for the workers to comply with them. And it was very difficult for them even to report for this medical checkups, reporting, whether to report on police, whether to register themselves on portal. There have been very contradictory and changing directives, circulars. So they had to run from post to pillar, and time was lost. And finally, when the railway would come and the passengers would not report, you can blame it on the workers finally. Railway can blame it on the state government, and state government can blame it on police, and police can blame it on the people. The fact was that the system was in a complete discord, and there was absolutely a total lack of sensitivity amongst most of the, I'm not saying everybody was like that, but most of the people, most of the authorities, either they were overworked, either the directives were contradictory, and many of them were helpless. So the travel was really, I would say, one of the worst experiences which these workers and particularly the children would ever forget in their lives. Now, what was the role of judiciary? I did not describe all this to you because you have seen these videos on the media, how they were walking, how 16 people died on railway tracks. Now, just see the role of judiciary. I'm very saddened to say this about the judiciary. See, while there have been minimum 12 high courts were approached by various NGOs and organizations for some remedies for these workers, for travel, for food, for other supplies. Now, 12 high courts were sympathetic by and large. They some directions to the government. They expressed their concerns. They asked government to give reports, place the facts, attempted to examine those facts. But can this be said about Supreme Court, the apex court? Less said the better. I will just say this much with maintaining the decorum. In dismissed, remember, no, just a moment. Don't proceed. Let me see. On April 9th, Supreme Court dismissed a PIL in this regard. And Chief Justice of India, Honorable Chief Justice of India, had remarked that time, because government said that we are providing them meals. I mean, I don't know how many were provided meals, but government said that they are being provided meals, and relying on that totally, Honorable Chief Justice of India said, if they are being provided food, then why do they need money for meals? A very logical question. And how can we stop it? Stop it means he was referring to the commotion that is available, that is happening at different centers or in the process of food grain distribution, etc. How can we stop it? And he just stopped. Did not give any orders about that, about the PIL. He dismissed it, and nothing happened. Complete reliance on the government statement. Now, thereafter, days passed by, almost a month passed by, and finally, disturbed by this happening, senior counsels of Supreme Court, go to the next slide. There is a title with a spelling mistake. Okay. The senior counsels of Supreme Court made an appeal, wrote a letter actually to Chief Justice of India, and they said that this is the time when Supreme Court has to intervene. It is on record. Now they are saying that this is a humanitarian crisis, and considering Article 21 of Constitution, there is a right to life. Now the right to life, a dignified life, human dignity, people are traveling in milk containers. People are being beaten up on the road for walking on the road. They cannot live in their homes because they don't have job, they don't have money, they don't have food. If they want to go back to their home, they cannot travel, they cannot even walk also. They cannot get railways, they cannot get bus. Now, in this situation, the Supreme Court was approached by the senior judges, senior advocates, and they said that this is a crisis where Article 21 becomes extremely relevant, and Supreme Court has to pass an order about that. And they said that if not rectified immediately, it would amount to court having abdicated the constitutional role and duty to these teeming millions of poor migrants. And it was after this and the host of media reports and media images that finally Supreme Court took a suo motu cognizance of the situation on May 28th. And then the order came. Go to the next slide. And then the order came that the migrants will not have to pay for travel. And more than 85%, what time this order was made? This order was made when more than 85% of the migrant workers have returned home. That is also a fact. Or they were in transit. Now, they had already incurred the cost, and after this, the Supreme Court order came, and that's why we find that 62%, only 14% could get the benefit of that. Rest of the migrant workers had to pay their, the fare, and they had to spend on their own. Now their conditions during the travel had been worse because there was no water. Many a time, some trains, some food was provided. We have seen those images, but by and large, the availability of food, the availability of water was scarce because the stops were not normal. How to get the water? Now, so it is reported by the government that we have distributed 2 crores of waters and all, but I don't know where they have distributed. They are making the total of everywhere they have distributed, but these workers did not get the bottles which they wanted. Some of them only got, but most of them they did not. Anyway, when they reached their destination, they were again ill-treated there. Now it was the turn of the respective state governments. The respective state governments ill-treated them. Further, they did not arrange the buses for them from the railway stations to the respective cities or the villages. Again, they had to wait, they had to fight, they had to stand in hot sun, sleep in the open for 2 days, 3 days, and then they could. Again, they had to manage their own transport, private buses, paying buses and all that. Paying for the buses and truck travel, etc., etc. So all this, so the conditions, the plight of the migrant workers is extremely painful, and this shows a particular class attitude. Now, did this happen for the people who were locked in the foreign countries, who were in Europe, for example, they were brought in India, in Iran, they were brought. From Iran, they were brought, the Indians who were stranded there. Now, the people who were stranded in other countries, they were brought by aeroplane. Everything was planned. Everything was planned meticulously, at least apparently it seems. Hotels were booked for their quarantine, and everything went in order. Government could spend for that. Maybe government might have taken the plane fare for them, but government had spent a lot of money for that. But in case of migrant workers, they belong to a different class. And this is where the class workers, the class attitude of the government has become very visible. Okay, now we'll go to the... Hello? Hello? Anybody asking anything?
No, sir, you can continue.
Okay, now let's go to the next slide. Now this is about the migrant workers. Now, what about the wages? What exactly happened about the wages? Now, Government of India issued a circular under the this National Disaster Act, they issued a circular saying that all the employees, wherever there are employees, wherever there are workers, they must be paid salaries as if it was a normal condition. That means as they would have been paid normally for the period of lockdown. That was the meaning of the circular or the notification which was issued by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Now, how many workers got their wages like this? Now this is about the regular workers. This is about the workers who have the formal contracts of employment. Now I'm talking about them. Now my experience tells me that the big companies, yes, they did pay. Big companies where the permanent employment is there, they did pay. But they did not pay for their contract workers. I mean, for example, the ratio today in the industry is this: in the manufacturing sector, even in the service sector, the ratio has come down to the level of 75-25. That means 75% are the contract workers and 25% or less are the permanent workers. Now these contract workers who constitute 75% of the regular workforce, they are regularly working in the manufacturing units or even the service sector units, but these contract workers were not paid salaries, except again a few companies. I know certain companies where even the contract workers were also paid salary. I'm really proud of them. But they are exceptions, they are not the rule. So contractors did not pay, or they paid only for the month of March, because on say 22nd the lockdown was declared. So for 8 days they paid, but for the month of April they did not pay. For some paid 50% for the month of April and nothing thereafter. So this generally is the condition. Now this order was challenged by some employers in high courts. The high courts refused to give stay order. For example, Bombay High Court. The matter went to Supreme Court. Now in Supreme Court, now it's very interesting. In Supreme Court, now all these petitions were happening. Now the petition also came on behalf of the employers, that the government is asking us to pay the salaries when we are not earning anything. Now what can we do? And we should not be forced to pay the salary, because under the Industrial Disputes Act or under the labor legislations, this period may not qualify for the payment of salary or wages. Now Supreme Court first postponed the matter. First they made certain remarks which were extremely pro-employer, but did not pass any order. But they passed an order very clearly that no coercive action should be taken against the employers who do not pay the salary like this. They did not strike down the circular issued by the government. This should be understood. They did not say that the circular is bad in law. They did not strike down the circular or the provision, but they said that let that circular and the provision be there, but at the same time, no coercive action should be taken against the erring employers. So it was in limbo, and therefore the employer said, okay, now no coercive action is again, we will not pay. I mean, those who didn't want to pay, some really paid. And now, yesterday, 2 days back, day before yesterday, Supreme Court has finally given an order. And what government did, that I also tell you first, and then what Supreme Court, I will tell you what Supreme Court did. The government passed an order. It withdrew its circular on 18th of May. On 18th of May, government says, Government of India, that we are withdrawing the circular issued earlier on probably 29th of March somewhere, that the salary has to be paid. So salary would be payable between the day of the declaration of lockdown and 18th of May. But after 18th of May, the circular is not applicable. And therefore, what happens after 18th of May is entirely left to the employers. So that government itself retracted from its original decision, number one. And number two, Supreme Court said that in any case, no coercive action should be taken. And now, Supreme Court, day before yesterday, had issued an order on this petition of the employers that this matter should be settled by negotiations between employers and the employees. I mean, it's very strange, to say the least. It's extremely strange that Supreme Court is, when approached by the employers and both the parties are arguing, the Supreme Court is giving the order that we will not decide about this matter, whether the salary for the lockdown period is to be paid or not paid. We are just saying that employers and employees should sit together and decide. So what happens to the circular and the notification which the government has issued? Does it have the enforceability of law or not? That is still not clear. Even with the orders, it is not clear. But it is now. It is like the story of Birbal and Badshah, that there is a parrot which is the pet of a queen, and the parrot is dead. Now you don't have to say that it is dead, because if you say the parrot is dead, it's a very bad statement. It's a very painful. It will be very painful for the queen, and therefore what you say is the parrot is not moving, parrot is not talking, parrot is not eating, parrot is not breathing. But don't say parrot is dead. Now, this precisely has happened now. You cannot take coercive action against those employers who do not pay. You say that this matter is to be settled by negotiation. That means it doesn't have the force of law. But still you don't say that the provision is struck down. Now, that's why I say it's a very strange kind of decision by the Supreme Court, and government is going to make its statement after, I think, in the month of July somewhere. The date is put on 15th or some date in July, and again the matter will be heard at that time. I don't know what government will do it, what Supreme Court will do at that time. I mean, why this matter is placed on 15th of July. Anyway, now next slide. Okay, now I will talk about the labor laws and again come back to the Kerala, to the performance of Kerala. See, in this period, certain governments, I don't talk politically, but the governments always belong to some party. You cannot help that. 4 state governments in the country, which happen to be, I don't know whether coincidence or not, that you decide, but both 4 states, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat, Uttar Pradesh, and Karnataka, they have suspended all the labor laws except 3. Statewide, there is exceptions are slightly bigger or smaller, but all the labor laws except a few for 3 years. Now, which means that now in those states, the hours of work, the conditions of work, maybe, I mean, the enforcement of that, then particularly the enforcement of the, what I would say, the hire and fire rules. That is, you can suspend anybody, you can terminate anybody's service, you can throw anybody out anytime. You may not implement the contracts made between the unions and the employers. All this is suspended. Holidays, working hours, leaves, everything is suspended. So, I mean, I can go on telling, I mean, enlarging the list like this. So all the labor laws are suspended. Now, why is this done? This is done in the name of facilitating the employers. Now, a survey made in this regard clearly shows that no employer is going to invest because of this. If companies are really in difficulty, the employees do understand and employees do make adjustments. We have made it in some of the industries where we know that the employer is really in difficulty. The factory is just becoming insolvent. Now the employees do understand their survival and they do make adjustments about the payment and reducing that. It is being done, and not that it will not be done, but they have suspended the laws saying that it will attract the investment. So the purpose of this is different than what is being made out to be. See, there has been demand of many employers, employer organizations, to change the very face of the labor laws in this country. I'm afraid that these governments or certain sections of the employers are taking or want to take a misadvantage of the situation, and now the workers are facing this. Now there are no laws, for example, Contract Workers Act. Now that law itself will not be there because this law is suspended, this act is suspended. So even if your principal employer doesn't pay and the contractor doesn't pay the wages, you can just go to the court only if your salary happens to be less than 15,000 rupees, otherwise not. So, it's so bad. Minimum Wages Act, it's all gone. Anyway, so this is what is happening to the workers. Then we'll come to the package part of it, because what government has declared as package and what government should have declared as package. We'll go to that part now. Second thing, now we are discussing these days now in various departments of economics and media and columns on economic policy, that the government has declared a package which is worth 10% of GDP. Now let us talk about that, because anyway we're discussing this whole issue from the perspective of what are the economic consequences of this pandemic. Now I need not, because this is economics department, I need not tell the economics professors and the students that India was already in the grip of economic recession before this pandemic started. The growth rate has come down, if not recession, at least there was slowdown for sure. The manufacturing output has come down, and like this, all sectors were being affected. And then came Corona, and then came lockdown. Now it is very clear that the demand is down and everything is down. Now let me just speak a few words about the aggregate demand aspect of this. See, 60% of our aggregate demands come from domestic sector, domestic private consumption. So private consumption 60% today. Now that, in that, the majority of the people are poor. Now they don't have work, they don't have money, they don't have, of course, the demand has gone down substantially. So this 60% of the aggregate demand is going to suffer and has suffered substantially in this period, and going to suffer substantially in the days to come. The private sector investment is not going to happen because everybody would postpone the investment. Because for what? Not for they don't have money, because they don't see the market. They don't see the demand, aggregate demand in the market, because finally the consumers are not there in the market who will invest. So the expansion plans, take automobile sector for example. How can they invest? Who will buy scooters? Who will buy cars? It is very difficult to buy cars. Who will buy consumer durables? Who will buy white goods? So it's just not possible. So who will buy houses now? Who will make investment in houses? So who will take loans for the houses now? So recession is going to spread and deepen. It's number one. So domestic consumption will be substantially affected, has been affected, number one. Number two, the private sector investment is not going to happen. Number three is exports. Now excess of exports or imports is what India is already having excess of imports over exports. But even whatever we export is going to suffer because the world is in crisis. So obviously the exports are not going to rise. So what is left now is only the government expenditure. This is the fourth component of aggregate demand. So as we know, aggregate demand has four components. One is domestic consumption. Second is private sector investment. Third is exports and excess of exports over imports. And last is the government expenditure. So everyone, including industrialists, including traders, including workers, everybody was waiting for the government package. And the news came, the Prime Minister's declaration that it is going to be 10% of GDP. Everybody really gave a sigh of relief as finally government is doing something very substantial. Because world over, for example, US, 9% of their GDP. So we are going 10% of GDP. And many countries are even crossing that limit also. So everybody, yes, India is something and government is doing something. And in next 4 press conferences, we had the cat was out of the bag. And we saw that actual government outlay in the year to come, or maybe even 2 years to come, it will not exceed even 2% of GDP. Some people say 1% of GDP. I give a complete leeway. The government has decided to take guarantees for the loans. Now, maybe government will have to, pay some money to the banks because some people will make defaults. They will have to pay for that. So even taking that into account also, in any case, this year and next year taken together, with this package, government will not be required to spend more than 2% at the most with any liberal kind of estimation of the government package. So how much is going into the hands of the poor people? How much is government going to spend? Now, previously, on 27th of March, Nirmala Sitharaman declared one package. It was claimed to be 1.75 lakh crores, and which is included in this 10%. Now, what was the real worth of that 1.75 lakh crores? I had calculated it that time. I can, for the want of time, I will not go into that, but I can show you that it was not more than 70,000 crores, which was claimed to be 1.70 lakh crores. It was not even half of that. Government being put in the about 20 crores of Jan Dhan accounts. Now 1,500 rupees total 3 months, 500 each month. That was one component. Second was free food.
Sir, you are not audible. Ajit sir. Ajit sir. Ajit sir, you are not audible.
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are audible now.
So this package, which has been declared by the government, is about the existing schemes of the government to be implemented. There are many schemes which are existing. For example, farmers, some direct money being paid to the farmers. Now just see what it has action since February, effective from December, to rupees 2,000 to be paid 3 times in a year. The government declared in the month of March an installment which was already due. The government declared that we will pay it, and government included it in the package. The same was included in the package, which was due otherwise than budgeted. There are many schemes which are declared as the farmers relief for the farmers. The same thing is there. 3 lakh crores for the MSMEs, government is standing guarantee. I'm not against, I'm not saying that this should not have been done, but I'm saying this is not going to help. What was required was putting money directly into the hands of the poor, the migrant, the peasants, because the peasants are also ruined. I have not talked about them, but the peasants are also ruined. So this is because their standing crop, it could not be sold in the market because they just could not reach the market. Now so the peasants. So taking all these factors into account, we can see that this package, which is supposed to give relief to the economy, bring the economy back to life, is not going to help because it is completely directed towards supply side. Supply side measures are necessary, I'm not denying them. But now is the time for more of the demand side measures rather than the supply side measures. And those are completely lacking in this package. So we can discuss this package in details. So I have made an alternative package. And I just want to draw your attention to this. Now, can we go to the last slide? Go to the last slide. Okay. Now, if we can enlarge it, please try to enlarge it if possible. See, now I have given some ideas about what should have been done, because when I say something, I should say something positive also. Positive means what exactly is needed. So this I had written in the month of April, remember. In the month of April means in the first week of April, when the package was not announced by the government. I'm continuing with the same package because now there is a message, no sound. Am I audible?
Yes, sir, you are audible. Yes, you are audible, sir.
Okay. So I have said, if you look at the table, I have said in a table, immediate medical intervention and stockpile of future epidemics, etc. are required. Now move the slide to the right. I think it is better that yes. So 2 lakh crores I am saying for revamping the whole health system in India. So let us take this as an opportunity. Then financial rescue for the casual and informal workers, it should be 1 lakh crores. Then for farmers, cash package, 1 lakh crores. Then loan waiver schemes, they have to be there. Nobody has talked about loan waiver scheme for the small producers and the small farmers. So they would be necessary. Otherwise, the banks would go bankrupt if government doesn't provide money. So it has to be 2 lakh crores. Then enhanced Manarega. Now, this is a scheme which I'm talking about. Harsh Mandir, for example, yesterday he has written one article and he's also talking about this. I had written this in the first week of April. I am saying that Manarega has to be enhanced and enlarged to incorporate the urban youth. I mean, rural youth, needy people, urban workers. And for this government has to provide 3 lakh crores. Now I'm saying employment guarantee must be there, not only in the rural areas, but even in the urban areas. And even in the rural areas, it has to enlarge. Now government is good that government is spending 40,000 crores additionally than what was budgeted in this 2021 budget. It's good, but it is too little. So it has to be much more than that. And then support the small employers, that is interest holiday and subsidy, interest holiday subsidy to the banks, because they will not be required to pay interest for a certain period of time. The small employers, the small business people, and I'm saying that that comes to 3 lakh crores. So if you see the total 8, 9, 10 and 12, so 12 lakh crores I'm saying. So I'm saying that this package, I said that this package should have been of 12 lakh crores. Now the government is probably saying that we are even more than that, because we are saying 10% of GDP. Now this 12 lakh crores is not coming to 10% of GDP, it's coming to 6% of GDP. So I am demanding something less than what government is declaring. So it might happen that the government is more generous than what I expect it to be. But the point is that what government has declared is not its own expenditure. What I am demanding is government's own expenditure. Now one might say, okay, you can demand anything, you can demand moon also and sun also, but where would money come from? That's the main point. And how will it be administered? Now these two things are very crucial. One cannot be irresponsible in demanding something when something is absolutely unrealizable. So go to the second last slide, slide number 15. Okay, the slide just before this. Here I am talking about the sources of funds for Corona relief package. So I have tried to chart out how government can raise money reliably. So the first component from which the government, first source from which government can raise, increased collection of direct taxes. Now direct tax collection of the country is, say, I mean, the gross to the center comes to around 12 lakh or 13 lakh crores, suppose. I'm saying that 4 lakh crores additional collection has to be made. I mean, I gave you the budget figure for 2021. So I'm saying there has to be some more color. And how is this possible? So I said that rolling back of the corporate tax concessions, which were announced in 2019 in August, after the budget was declared. Nirmala Sitharaman has really been a generous person as far as the employers are concerned. And she was extremely generous with, of course, the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that in the wake of the forthcoming economic crisis, which they realized after the budget was passed in the parliament, unfortunately, and they declared tax concessions to the tune of 1.42 lakh crores, which comes to about 0.75% of GDP. So these concessions were declared in a press conference, not in the parliament, after the budget was passed. I mean, urgent decisions are made. So I am saying that rolling back of those then transaction tax. Now I want to talk a few words about this. What is security transaction? It happens on the sale and purchase of security, stock market. So or any transaction happens there, you have to pay a tax on that. Now that tax is related to the value of whatever transaction happens. Now you know that when everything was closed, when every market was closed, even you could hardly buy groceries, you could have bought shares. I mean, the only market that was working in the days of pandemic was stock market, which was a clear proof that stock market actually does not deliver anything. I mean, I'm talking this very responsibly. I'm a commerce person basically, and I have studied this financialization topic and the role of the stock market. I'm talking with all the responsibility of my statements, and I will stand by that. So I'm saying that in today's world, the financialized kind of the orgy of this speculation that is happening all over the world, the stock market is hardly really producing anything, adding value to the economy, except the financialization of the whole economy. So in India, the Sensex is rising even before this. I mean, it can rise and fall irrespective of whatever happens in the real economy, because it is basically a speculative index, an index of speculation rather than the real economy. So I am saying that 80% of the, more than 80, actually 80 to 83% of this stock is just not almost close to gamble. I'm saying that component of security speculative markets should be taxed more. Now, as of today, the security transaction tax as it exists in the remaining 17% component of the stock market, which is relatively less speculative because there about 80 to 83%, the tax is 1/10 of that. So it is 0.01%. And in the other section, the delivery section, it is 0.1%. I am saying that this component of
Sir, you are not audible again. Ajit sir. Sir, we can't hear you.
So if, am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, you're audible now.
So if the savings are not diverted to speculative market, they will come to real economy. At least there are chances, and therefore, I'm suggesting this. And lastly, taking action against the tax evasions from the tax havens. I do not talk about the tax havens. Tax havens are the centers where the centers of tax evasion. So money is getting round tripped from India to these tax havens and coming back to India again in the form of speculative not FDI, it is FIIs, institutional investment and participatory notes in this format. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi bought 15 lakh pieces and did not go into all that. So they had promised a very stern action and bringing money from outside, at least take some action. So I'm just suggesting collect 4 lakh crores of rupees. That's all. I'm not explaining anything more than that. Then drawing reserves from the Reserve Bank of India. So it can, this is a time when I suggest that 2 lakh crores is not a big amount, which is a very small portion of that. And then additional borrowings. Government will have to make additional borrowings and it should be 6 lakh crores. So I am making a very realistic estimate and a possible estimate. I'm not suggesting something which is impossible to be achieved or something very ideological, something ideologically motivated. It is very realistic. So government will say, from where will we bring this money? Who will give us loan and who will buy this? Government securities now. But I'm saying that the government, this is called as monetization. See, government can buy this from Reserve Bank of India. So this will lead to inflation, no doubt. I'm not denying that fact as part of it. So it may lead to some inflation, some inflationary pressure. But if the economy is likely to be in recession, inflation should not be worried about. When there is such a human crisis, the inflation should not be worried about much, of course, provided it is in some limits. And the inflation should not be a cause of concern because the crude prices would also be are going to be low. They are already going down and they will go down further. So crude prices are going, and we import. We know, everybody knows that 80% of our crude consumption is imported. So we are going to save on that. So the inflationary pressure is not going to be a problem. Foreign exchange is not going to be a problem because we already have forex reserves. So this value of currency is not going to be a problem otherwise internationally. So we can take the risk of increasing so fiscal deficit has to go on. Now we have already budgeted for 3.5%. Now it will go to 6%, and it should not be worried. Many economists, right from Raghurajan, all are saying the same thing. Even Gopinath and many economists are saying the same thing. The mainstream economists, those who are on the right side, right of the center of ideological terms, they are also suggesting high fiscal deficit. So this is what I suggest, and with the massive employment guarantee scheme, and this is going to be the package. And last point I want to say, that labor reforms, the idea of liquidating the labor laws is going to reduce the bargaining power of the workers beyond repairs, because the employers will be paying further less and less, giving worse terms to the workers. This will affect the economy. If you pay less, the bargaining power of the workers goes down. The purchasing power, their purchasing power is going to fall. This will affect the demand, aggregate demand, and this will bring down the economy further. So purchasing power, the bargaining power of the workers should be increased, not reduced. And if government makes this kind of reforms, like liquidating labor laws and all, it will really affect the economy very badly, apart from whether it could be good for the self-respect of the workers, dignity of the workers, their human conditions, that apart, that's a different story, which is very important, but I'm not talking about that right now because we're discussing economy. So from that point of view also. And lastly, if somebody says that because we dilute the labor law, there will be more investment, I would say that, particularly the states, the government, the 4 state governments, which have which have liquidated the labor laws, diluted the labor laws. Now, see the record. The 4 states in which the labor laws are relatively, generally and relatively well implemented are the states like Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. Now these states and Andhra Pradesh, these are the states where the labor laws are relatively better implemented compared to the other countries. Now out of these three, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh. These are particularly Madhya Pradesh and Gujarat, they have no trace of labor law implementation. So even if you dilute the labor laws or liquidate the labor laws altogether, which were already not in practice, it is not going to attract investment. They have to improve their social environment. The women are not secure. Your social environment is completely, led by the political gangsters, political mafia. I mean, I'm not talking about any particular party. Many parties are part of this. So if that is the social culture, that is going to be the what the industries would face, and the people are poor, the investments won't come there. So to say that the people will withdraw from China because people are frustrated with China because China had the pandemic first, people are angry with China because Trump is against China, so everybody would like to withdraw from China. I mean, this is, I would say, to say that this is childish. To think like this is childish. No company makes an investment based on this. They're worried about their industrial economics. And so long as the industrial economics of this country, of our country, changes, nothing is going to happen. So India is a continent by itself. We should feed our people. We should make efforts to enlarge our market. We should make efforts to enlarge our manufacturing. And Atmanirbhar Bharat, I fully support. Yes, I fully support. If Indian products are available, we should go for them, no doubt. And we should give them priority also. I have no issues about it. But what they are saying is not Atmanirbhar Bharat. It is Khasgi Nirbhar Bharat. It is Niji Nirbhar Bharat. Because the last point now of my presentation is, as a part of this package, the government has added a bogie of privatization, which actually is supposed to be the engine from their perspective, but that is coming as the last bogie. They have declared a massive privatization program in the name of pandemic package for Corona. I mean, this is a travesty of truth, I should say. I mean, to say the least, I should say. So this privatization program did not talk, then it will not going to help the economy. It is not going to help employment, because ultimately everything rests on the purchasing power of the people, and privatizing defense, privatizing space, privatizing atomic sector is additionally is going to be dangerous, but it's a different topic. I don't want to go into that right now. So in all, this is what I want to say. So about 15 minutes are left, I suppose. So there can be question answers. So I would say that this can be converted into an opportunity to revamp ourselves. I'm not here to criticize. I'm not here to say that no, I'm not a person who would bite the wrists. I'm saying that let us convert this into an opportunity. But unfortunately, there are some sections, some classes, and government is very close to them, want to convert this into an opportunity to privatize, an opportunity to set the scores. I mean, the backlogs of the scores, political backlogs, and the backlogs of so-called economic reforms. So I think that's a very bad idea. It will be bad for the people. It will be bad for the economy. It will be bad for the future of this country. So with this, I thank you very much for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to share my thoughts, ideas. I'm open for questions, corrections, and if at all you want to add or say something more, you are most welcome. I'm here to listen. I would be learning from you.
Thank you very much, sir, for this excellent session. I'm sure everybody must have got a lot from this, and everybody is benefited out of it. So let's go to the question and answers. So the first question is about the alternative business that people can run for the survival. So post pandemic, post this lockdown, what do you feel? Which kind of business will survive, and how to revive the demand side? Because as you said, it is the supply side package and the supply side economics that we are emphasizing on. But then what can be done to revive the demand side?
Yeah, as I said, I call this as a time for the New Deal. Just as Franklin Roosevelt in 1933, in the face of Great Depression in US, he came out with a slogan called New Deal. And in this New Deal, he has said that this is not going to be the more of the same, but this is going to be on a different value platform altogether. And he became the most popular president in the United States, in the history of the United States almost. So we need a new deal now. A new deal is needed. Now, how is it possible? See, I say that on one hand, we have a surplus manpower. The unemployment rate, even before this pandemic, had reached almost 8% was the unemployment. Yeah. Now it must have gone up to 30-35%. So now this manpower which is available, we are the youngest country. Now our average age is 29. So if we, and there is need, and there is need for employment, and there is a developmental backlog. Now why can't we bring these two together? Now this is an opportunity. Now here, now government has taken, and people are following, people are waiting for government to also give orders. Now this is the time. Suppose we have a developmental backlog. Now let us jump to clean it out. For example, our education sector, social capital, the building of the social capital, build the social sector, build the education sector, build the health sector, build the urban development. Our urban areas, including Mumbai, are turning into big slums. The Mumbai has turned into a big slums, except Malbaril and some areas. Practically, it has become a big slum. Pune is also turning like that. So why not revamp our, because 45% people live in urban areas now. How can any investment is possible unless our basic services are improved in urban as well as rural areas? So this is an opportunity, and it is possible. I would just quote one report over here, just as I quoted the Standard Workers Action Network report. I am quoting Azim Premji University ka ek report hai about the state of work in India, and they have devised a scheme about this. I've also written a booklet on this, but I'm saying that it is possible to devise an urban employment guarantee scheme to be implemented by the local bodies, and where we can make our cities more livable, water supply reliable, our solid waste management, and our health systems. We can improve the health systems, we can improve our health standards, health parameters, and we can come out with better human capital, which is the capital of the country. Even under capitalism, if we were to go by the standards of capitalism, it requires human capital rather than the finance capital, which is really the backbone of the country. We can build it, and that is where the demand will be generated. So demand will be generated and the development will happen in one go. This is what I think should be done and is possible to be done. And again, one might say, I'm talking, I'm speaking out my dream. No, let me remind you one thing. Look, in 1972-73, there was a huge famine in India, in Maharashtra. I'm telling you a very success story of Maharashtra, and that's why I'm really proud to be a Marathi person. One of the grounds is this: in Maharashtra there was a famine, and in 72-73, the trade unions, the left trade unions, and some other trade unions were joined. They went on one-day strike to catch the attention, to draw the attention of the government for famine relief. Now, the left leaders were there, trade union leaders were there, demanded in the talks with the government that provide jobs to the people in the rural areas. The famine code where us samay hota tha kuch. So government said, but where will money come from? Now it was the trade union leaders, remember, the working class leaders with the red flags in their hand. They said that we will contribute money. How? They said that the professional tax that we pay today, has originated there. There was a constitutional provision. With study, they said that we are ready to pay professional tax, which will be mostly imposed on the professional, including the workers. And the limits were so devised that the ordinary workers, the factory workers, were also required to pay the tax. They put a condition that we are giving very powerful consent to this tax on one condition, that the entire proceeds of this tax should be earmarked for employment guarantee scheme in Maharashtra. And that is the genesis of Manrega in India. In 74, this scheme was launched by government of Maharashtra as Rozgar Hami Yojana and was funded entirely by the proceeds of the professional tax. So I'm saying we can even have one more time, although I'm not suggesting, we can have an employment cess and we can go like that. And that's how the demand can be generated. I took a little longer to answer this question, but I also want to tell you a success story. It is possible. If we really wish, we can come together and everybody would cooperate. I'm very positive, I'm very optimistic.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for this answer. The next question is how to strengthen the safety network of unorganized sector workers in India.
How to strengthen what? The network of the unorganized workers.
Safety network for the unorganized sector workers.
Yes. See, yes, you're absolutely, it's a very important question. Firstly, that we have to again make the government work. I will just tell you and give you an example of construction workers. About 52,000 crores are lying with various boards, welfare boards in various states together. The money which is collected in the form of tax, earmarked specifically, called as the construction workers welfare tax. It is not used, not even, I would say, 25% of it is used for the welfare. Money is lying otherwise. In Maharashtra, more than 7,000 crores are lying like this. So there should be boards. So I suggest that there should be certain unorganized workers, employment boards should be established. So I suggest that if you want to employ a contract worker, you have to requisition the contract worker from Contract Workers Board, which is an autonomous body led by the government. Government will take a charge from the workers for that, and they will give the names. They will give a card to those who want to work as contract workers, and they will deploy them to the respective industries. Industry will pay salaries to the board, and board will make the payment to the workers. Now this is working in Hamal Mathadi, although there have been some misuses of that, that's a different story. But yes, so this is possible. So this can be done for construction workers, this can be done for most of the unorganized workers, particularly say rickshawalas, for example. Certain bodies, certain autonomous bodies which are connected to the government, which are affiliated to the government, led by the government departments, but not directly the government bodies, like Mathadi board. So like this safety nets can be made powerful. And also there are certain services which should be guaranteed. Like for example, you cannot have ESI, for example, which is working in the current fashion today. Now ESI has huge and crores of thousands of crores lying with them. Now we can convert ESI, PF into real social security networks, and we should start calling them a social security tax rather than provident fund contribution. In Western countries, they are recognized as social security tax. Let us call it a social security tax. Then it becomes an obligation of the government to provide that service. So like this, I mean, requires a long answer, but still I can suggest some like this. For domestic workers also, there is a board declared by the government, but nothing is done for that. So for domestic workers, for contract workers, for self-employed, so different boards can be established, and there can be social security tax, and based on that, a network can be established.
Okay, thank you. Now the next question is about the economy. So post-COVID, how it is possible to handle the employment? So how to increase the employment after this lockdown, and what are the alternative ways for the government to handle this situation?
See, basically what I've said is ultimately it all depends on the purchasing power in the hands of the people. So government is providing loans, it's a good thing, I welcome that, I'm not opposing that. But that is not going to help. People will not come to take the loans unless people see the demand. So if government starts spending money, if government puts 1 rupee, it will have a multiplier effect, and all of us understand what is multiplier effect. So 1 rupee spent by the government will generate demand in multiples of that. And that would really help. So one thing. Second is easy money policy that government is trying, but still something more is required to be done, particularly the rural areas, the peasants. Now, government has to still, give more support prices. Because support prices are declared, but they are never delivered. Let's remember that. There is a lot of, it's a policy fraud that happens. For example, you declare, tur dal. Now, tur dal, you declare price. Now, the actual market price is 1,000 rupees below that. And nothing happens. Government just doesn't do anything. Government says that, okay, come and stand in the queue. Now, there are rains coming. People are standing in hot sun for 3 days. Suddenly, rain comes and the entire tur dal stock is washed out of the peasant who has brought it to the market. Now, such frauds should not happen. So, government should have a scheme for peasants where actually they should pay the market difference. They should not act. If they can't buy, they don't buy it. Just pay the difference. And this is how direct benefit transfer dena hai to aisa kar sakte ho. And you can club this purchase of the government. The government has huge stocks. I mean, more than 2 times reserve stocks are there. The government can distribute it and buy more food from the peasants at little higher prices so that money goes into the hands of the peasant. So this is the only way. There is no other way. There is no other way. This is the only way. In health sector, in the education sector, and infrastructure, government has to put money.
Okay, thank you. Now there are 2 questions about the expectations in future. So first is, do you think that this unlock 1 is going to help us in future? And second is about the foreign exchange reserve, because we recently heard a news that the foreign exchange reserve in India has increased. So then do you see a kind of benefit of these 2 things in future?
So I'm just confused about the question. You said how will you
unlock 1? So do you see any benefit of that? And the second benefit is about the foreign exchange reserve.
Yes. See, foreign exchange reserves we have, it's a good thing. But see, the problem of foreign exchange, we should be a little cautious about it. See, foreign exchange reserve that India has $500 billion now we have it. Okay, achhi baat hai. But the point is, all these are parked funds. This is not our own earned foreign currency. This is not export earnings. These are the funds which are parked by the foreign investors and who are institutional investors, most of them. Because we have changed even the definition of FDI such that it is very difficult to distinguish between the 2 now. Anyway, whatever it is. So they can fly off anytime. It's like the pigeons, who are there or in Bombay streets pe hote hai na. Kabutar. I mean, you have just put some grains and there is one big what I would say, noise or something happens, they will just fly off. At the flash of the fingers, they will fly off. So this foreign exchange reserves, we should not base our policies on that. Because if we do that, then we are at the peril to design our economic policies to please the so-called investors. They are speculators, they are not necessarily investors. That we should be very careful about. But anyway, it's a good thing that if it is, we have got foreign exchange reserves, at least we don't have to care much about the valuation of our currency, the exchange value ke baare mein at least we don't have to worry. So it's a good, but I would say, good facility which has become available to us, but it should not be relied upon too much. Because otherwise, we would be dancing to their tunes. That should not happen, number 1. Lockdown 1 is, of course, going to, see, in my view, let me tell you very frankly, this, how we should look at this corona basically, the way we handle this corona pandemic. I'm not a medical expert, but whatever I have read, given whatever mismanagement has happened, one thing is very good about India, is that the recovery rate in India, the death rate in India is very encouraging. Encouraging means death rate is very low and the recovery rate is improving very fast. Whatever pitfalls that we have, in spite of that, our record on that front is not bad. And this is one thing. And second thing is the resistance power of I would say, this the power to resist the disease of the Indians is relatively more because the population in India, 65% of the population is young. And therefore, it is likely that they are not likely that they would not catch the disease, and if at all they catch, they would remain asymptomatic because comorbidities would be less. So we should not overemphasize the threat of the pandemic. We have to understand it realistically, and from that point of view, I would suggest that unlocking is necessary and should be done. We should be little, not adventurous, but we should be little bold about it. That's what I say, and so it will help.
Okay, thank you, sir. Now the last question. The question is about the remigration of the workers post the lockdown. So what kind of trend you foresee in terms of the remigration of the workers?
See, I have again some survey reports which say that about 20% are saying that they will not come back because they see that it's a very difficult life. So there is one possibility. There is a possibility that about 20-25% would stay back, not permanently, but they would delay their recoming to their respective places of employment because they want to make sure that they are safe. And about 30% are eager to come. 30-40% are eager to come, and they will certainly come. So there is going to be a shortage of labor for some days to come. But shortage of labor in absolute numbers hoga, but in relatively demand and supply terms mein shortage nahi hoga because the demand is also going to be less. So in my view, remigration will take its place provided the government again has to take responsibility and government takes it. So I demand that again the same story should not repeat on the same ticket. The government should pay for the travel, number one. Government should arrange properly that they come back to the respective places in an honorable, in a dignified way. That government should ensure. One good thing again that has happened, this is found in the surveys, because I could not share all the surveys which I have seen, that the landlords have been very considerate. It has been observed that landlords, by and large, have not pressed for the rent and have not dislodged generally the people from their respective places of residences. So it's the tenants. So it's a good thing. So I think remigration will not be impossible because they are not going to be evicted, but they should be put, some money should be put in the hands of the government. Government can say that if you come back to your place, your first salary, the government takes the responsibility of that. At least say that, so that they can pay out the loans and they can come to the market again. So again, that is also one way now the government can intervene. Anyway, so that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much, sir. We are all benefited a lot out of this deliberation. We are really thankful to you. Now I request my student, Ms. Ria, to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of the department. Ria?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ajit sir. This has been a very insightful session, backed with data and coming from a place of empathy and seeking justice and improvisation for quality of life for all. While many systems in our country are showing apathy